Welcome back to another episode of OPH Outdoors, guys. We're back on the every Sunday and Wednesday scheduled videos right now. I wanted to get out and actually go fishing today, or for this video, but when I went to go out 2 days ago, it was 50-something degrees. Yesterday it dropped down in the 30s, and then it snowed, and we got probably about 2 inches of snow. So that kind of put a damper on going out fishing. So all the snow is melting right now, and it's almost gone, but it's really wet out, and I just didn't have time to go out and go fishing. So because of that, we are back in the little tackle storage in my basement right now, and we are going to be talking about my top 5 baits to throw. Now we're going to be doing my top 5 baits that I like to throw. I already did a video on the top 5 baits to catch the most fish. I think like 2 of these baits overlap with the baits in that video, but you guys will see here in a minute when we get through some of these baits. So without any further ado, let's get into my top 5 baits that I throw. These are the baits that I always have in my tackle box whenever I'm going bait or bank fishing. It's everything I've got on my kayak when I'm going fishing on my kayak, and it's always the stuff that I have on the deck of my boat whenever I'm out fishing. And really on my kayak too, I always have these rods in my rod holder every time I'm out fishing on it, just because it's the baits I like to throw the most. For my area, it's the baits that's produced the most fish mostly throughout the entire year, and just the ones I like, just the ones I like to throw the most, and the ones that get the most use in my fishing. So to start off, we will start off with the spinnerbait. Now, I know a lot of people lately have stopped using the spinnerbait and gone towards a chatterbait, but personally, I throw a spinnerbait more than I do a chatterbait, just because I can throw with a spinnerbait up in brush or near wood, and I have a lot better time throwing this up in wood than I do a chatterbait. A chatterbait always gets stuck. I'll throw a spinnerbait, and probably 90% of the time I can pull it out of that brush, and I have no problems with it. Now, if I'm not throwing a spinnerbait on this, then I also do throw a chatterbait. That's not one of my top 5, but it would be the number 6 bait on here, is a chatterbait. But yeah, I love throwing spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, anything like that. Just a fast-moving bait, like a reaction bait, that looks good in the water and attracts fish. And both of those baits, a spinnerbait and chatterbait, definitely attract a lot of fish. So my first one that I'm going to go, or that I went through, is a spinnerbait. Now, number 2 on the list, it's pretty vague how I'm saying what bait this is, and it's just a crankbait. Really, the one I'm talking about on this is mid-diving crankbaits. So on here, it actually may just be a Strike King 5XD, but I like throwing mid-diving crankbaits a lot, whether it's Strike King, Rapala, Storm, any brands really, Booyah, all brands I like throwing crankbaits. When I'm throwing crankbaits most of the time though, I do prefer to throw in between 8 and 12 foot divers, but I will go up to 15 foot sometimes with these Strike King 5XDs that are rated for up to 15 foot. The reason why I like those is because they're not as big as the ones like the 6XDs that go down to 15, 16, 17, 18 foot. So I like staying with the 5XDs and under, just because I like that smaller crankbait. I don't like throwing those huge crankbaits, just because personally I don't think that they get as many bites as these. Yes, you can catch bigger fish, but I think any crankbait produces big fish, and it produces numbers of fish too. So yeah, I'm throwing a lot of the time these Strike King 5XDs, or really anything that dives in between 8 and 12 foot divers. So there is my number 2 bait that I like to throw. So next up is actually another crankbait, and it is a Squarebill. The reason why I like throwing Squarebills is you can throw them pretty much anywhere. If you have rock, you can throw a Squarebill. If you have timber, you can throw a Squarebill. If you just have plain like dirt ground, you can throw a Squarebill. It digs up that dirt, creates commotion down there, and fish love that. So really, I throw a lot of Squarebills. I fish a lot of probably like 3 to 8 foot of water, and if I'm not fishing that, then I'm fishing like 8 to 12 foot of water. So in that range, Squarebills work great. A lot of the places we fish, they've got rock banks that I'll go and throw Squarebills on all day long. They've got good timber, that isn't like super dense to where you can't throw something like a crankbait in it. And yeah, it just works great, catches a lot of fish. It's got a smaller presentation than the 5XDs I just mentioned. This specifically is a Booyah, and it's really the exact same as the old Excaliburs. So I like these ones, they work good. If I'm not throwing this, I'm throwing pretty much a Strike King 1.5. And yeah, they catch numbers fish, but they also catch big fish, and they produce fish almost all the time. So that is why I like throwing these Squarebills. Next up is a bait that you guys are going to say, of course that's in your video, or of course that's in your top 5 baits to throw. It was in the top 5 baits to catch more fish video. It's pretty much every single video you watch of me, I'm probably throwing this bait. And it's just because it catches fish. No matter where you are, what the water conditions are, how the fish are biting, it catches fish. If I cannot get a bite, I automatically throw this bait and try to catch some fish. And of course, you probably know what it is by this point, and that is a Ned rig. I love throwing the Ned rig just because it's something small. You can find fish easier, start catching fish easy, and you can throw it in all different types of water. They make now, there's different places like Venom Lures who makes a EWG type Ned rig head, so you can throw it up in brush and it's weedless. You've got the Ned rig weedless ones, you've got the Ned rig open hooked. All these different brands make Ned rig heads. I prefer like a 1/6 or 1/5 ounce head just because it works best in the types of water I'm fishing, and some type of natural color. As you see here, it's like a what is that? Like a watermelon red flake Z-Man Finesse TRD, and the other side Chartreuse. I'm not sure the exact color scheme of this, but I throw this Ned rig a ton. If I'm not throwing this, then I'm throwing something like, I believe it's Drew's Crawl that Z-Man makes. I throw that color a lot too. So Ned rig, you can throw it pretty much anywhere, any conditions, you'll catch fish. You can catch big fish too. I've caught some of my bigger bass the past few years on a Ned rig, just because I'm throwing it in pre-spawn or spawn, and they love seeing that Ned rig. So that's why it's on this list of the top 5. And yeah, great bait. Highly suggest you throw it if you haven't thrown it yet. So let's get moving on to the last bait. So the last bait is one that I really started throwing a lot of probably a year and a half ago, maybe last year, and I started throwing it, and then now I always have it on deck. It produces a ton of fish for me. It works pretty much anywhere. You can throw it deep, you can throw it shallow, throw it in brush and rocks. Yeah, pretty much anywhere. So, like I said. But with that being said, it is a underspin or any type of paddletail swim bait. So, with this, I throw it on owner hooks. This is the owner flashy swimmer, and I also throw it on the owner beast hooks. And it's just a great bait to throw. Those are really good hooks. It's pretty much the only hook I've got in my tackle box, unless you get into exposed hook swim baits. And in that case, I've got some Z-Man hooks. I've got some custom ones from when I was just down at Chickamauga. I picked them up. So there are a lot of different ways you can throw it. You can throw exposed hooks, weedless. You can throw it on deep head, so you can throw it down in 20, 30 foot of water. A heavy head, you can throw it on underspins. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to throw it. And when I just say paddle tails, I don't just mean these finesse paddle tails. Like, this is a 3.3 inch right here. This is a Strike King Rage Swimmer. That's a 3.3 inch. I don't just mean these types of paddle tails. I throw all paddle tails. As you can see, when I say paddle tails, one second, I got hooked. When I say paddle tails, I also mean stuff like A-rigs. I throw this A-rig a ton. This is a Frenzy A-rig, and I've got 2 dummies on it because here in Ohio you can only throw 3 hooks on one bait. One second, got it all wrapped around. So this is a Frenzy A-rig. It's skirted A-rig. I've got 2 little Kitech swim baits up here. These are the 3.2s, I believe, and they're the skinnier ones. And then on the back, I've got the 4.2s, I believe. They're not even they're not even Kitechs. I actually believe they are the Bass Pro Shop versions. But those work good too. All Strike King paddle tails, Bass Pro Shop paddle tails. There's so many different paddle tails out there. They all work good. So yeah, I'm throwing that no matter if it's on the finesse style swim bait head, whether it's on an A rig or like in pre-spawn. A lot of stuff that you can throw is stuff like this. This is a Yum Paddletail right here, and I'm throwing this on a 3/8 ounce head. It's a 4.5 inch swimmer, and like I said, it's a Yum. I don't know the exact type of bait this is, but I was throwing this a ton down on Lake Chickamauga. It's what the big tournament the weekend before I was there was won on, so I picked some up, started throwing them, and I've got some like this, not this exact brand, but they work great. They're really good baits to throw, and something like this with a 3/8 ounce head, or even I throw a 1/2 ounce head, you can throw them real deep water, you can throw them into current, and they are awesome baits to throw. So as you guys can see, I throw these Paddletail type baits a lot. That's why I saved it for the last one that I was going to mention, because they produce fish, they produce numbers, big fish, depending on what size Paddletails you're throwing. And yeah, so pretty much all the baits I mentioned, great baits to throw. My personal favorite top baits to throw. I really wanted to do this video where I went to Bass Pro or Cabela's or Field and Stream, and I just picked out each of the baits that I was going to talk about, or picked out the baits that are my favorite and go through step by step of what I buy to set up those baits. But I couldn't get anybody to go with me, so it was just a weird timing where everybody was busy, couldn't get anybody to go with me to film when I was there. So I just decided to take what I had on my reels and just go through that way. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit about my top 5 favorite baits to throw. Really, there's a few more thrown in there, like the chatterbait with the spinnerbait, and then a few of those other paddletail type swim baits. But for the most part, it was my top 5 baits to throw. So hopefully that helps you guys. Hopefully you guys can maybe start throwing these baits. If you guys have any questions about specific setups for each one of these rods and reels, or the types of baits and stuff that I'm throwing, drop them in the comments, and I can make specific videos on specific techniques, whatever you guys need to get going. So I'm always out here and wanted to help you guys out, get started with throwing some new baits and getting into different techniques and stuff like that. So if you guys like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, make sure you guys are subscribed, and make sure you turn on the bell so you guys get notifications every single time I upload. Like I said, I'm going to be putting out a video every Sunday and a video every Wednesday for now. Once it gets into better fishing here this spring, I will be doing Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So one of those days is going to be informative videos, one of them is going to be just fishing content like challenge videos, and one of them is going to be tournament videos. So make sure you guys are subscribed, make sure you guys are following along for all the content that's coming out this summer, and let's try to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So that would mean a lot to me, and I would love to hit it. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you in the next video on Wednesday.